order. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll ask Commissioner Cervantes to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, here we go. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Okay, are you guys ready? I'm sorry, I'm not feeling good today. I'm sorry. Are you guys ready?
We are.
Okay, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Somebody else might have to do it. I'm sorry. I've been in and out of the hospital all week.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. Sorry, guys. I was going to miss the meeting because I've been sick for 2 weeks. I had heart procedures this week, and I'm just not feeling good today.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
I apologize, guys. I apologize. I should have missed the meeting, but I got up and go, I better come.
Thank you. Susie, can you do roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Lanas?
Here.
Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
Commissioner Walters?
Here.
Vice Chair Tombach? Commissioner Peden?
Present.
Commissioner Jarman? Commissioner Cervantes?
I'm here.
Commissioner Carrillo?
Present.
And Chairman Elliott.
Here. All right. Thank you very much. On to consent. Item number 1 is the approval of the minutes from the last meeting. Is there a motion?
All motion.
Moved by
I'll second.
Carrillo, second by Walters. Those in favor will say aye.
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 Any opposed? Let the record reflect it was unanimous. All right. Next item on consent is the approval of the draft letter to reaffirm the support and separation of the Public Safety and Human Relations Commission. To be candid with you, Commissioner Peden and I have not gotten together. I didn't get with him. I just been busy and crazy. So I'm just going to ask if we could continue this. I promise you that Commissioner Peden and I will get together before the next meeting and have something for you. With that in mind, is there a move to continue?
I'll move. So moved.
Moved by Peden.
I'll second.
Second by Walters. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Presentations, there are none. We move to our staff reports. I think we'll bring in Alex here. This is regarding a stop sign installation at the corner of 28th and Arrowhead. We'll get a staff report on it and we'll see where we go from there. Alex?
Good evening, Commissioners. The item before you tonight is the stop sign installation at the intersection of 28th and Arrowhead Avenue. The city have received citizen request to consider the installation of the stop sign. And at the intersection of 28th and Arrow Avenue, staff have went and studied the intersection, and they found that we found out that Arrowhead is a 1-lane, undivided secondary arterial north and south, runs over 28th Street, and there is no left turn pockets for both of the northbound and the southbound direction. So with the staff they found out that is the issue with the intersection, that is the alignment of the curb is not right. So that is in our studies, in our recommendation, it's warranted for an installation of stop sign. So this is to be final. We need to present it to the City Council. That is scheduled to be presented on the first meeting of May. I believe that is May 5th. Yeah, that's May 5th, 2021. So we bring it to you first, so you can, have the first hit at it, and then I can answer any questions that you guys have.
All right. Does that conclude your report?
Let's conclude the report. Simple
Thank
and
you.
easy.
Are there questions or comments on it? This is scheduled to go to council. Stop sign installation at the corner of 28th and North Arrowhead Avenue. And they've done all the work and they're asking council to approve it. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners?
I just have one question. I know it states that it's not, you don't have to do a CEQA review or whatnot. The only question I had, because I didn't see it in this document, is whether or not we anticipate a large traffic buildup on that stop sign, depending on certain parts of the day, that potentially could have a lot of cars, stuck there for a while they're getting through that stop sign and emitting, emissions into that community.
The speed limit on Sierra Way is about 35 miles per hour.
You mean Arrowhead?
Yes, and the 28th is 25 miles per hour intersection. There is not that much of a traffic that going on through that intersection that is warranted. The issue with the stop sign, it's just the idea of that is the intersection is not lined up very well. Mm-hmm. And the problems that we have, I'm not sure if I think staff did look at the accident history, and that is how we came up to the determination that we really need to install the stop sign at that location.
But to answer your question, this is Azam, the traffic engineer for the city, is that you're not going to get traffic buildup at the stop signs. What we call the ADT, the average daily traffic going north and south on Arrowhead, it doesn't exceed a certain level where you're going to get a large queue stopping at the proposed stop signs. Is that your question, Commissioner?
Yeah, appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Isn't there a Catholic school right in that area too, also?
There's a school, actually. It's east of that location. I can't remember the name of the school, but yeah, there is a school east of that location. So I think the installation of the stop sign here is good for the school and is good also for the pedestrian and the traffic behavior in following the rules of the road at this intersection.
And I think that there's also other north-south streets that offer an alternative for people that wouldn't be necessarily going to the schools. Is there other east-west streets other than the streets that would be facilitated by the stop sign?
Besides 28th, you have 30th, I think north of the 210, that you can use an alternate if you don't want to use for east-west street system. Is that where you're asking Commissioner Jesse for that?
Yeah, so that if somebody wanted to avoid the traffic, if there was any traffic, they could take an alternate route without too much out of the way.
Yes, exactly. So 30th is north of the 210, and then I think the next one south of 28th, it is Highland, if I'm not mistaken. I have
pretty good. I had a friend that lived on 28th Street, so I'm somewhat familiar. So I know that that's pretty common, the stop signs on the other ones, but if you could pick your route through there, I think that the stop sign near a school is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Other commissioners? All right. Is there a move to approve?
I'll move it. Commissioner Pino, I'll move to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
All right. Peden and Carrillo, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? The record reflect it's unanimous. Thank you, sirs. On to new business. This is a request by Commissioner Carrillo. Susie, it is all in the backup, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you should have seen it in your backup, which is a follow-up to the conversation that began last meeting with Chief Mejia. I don't know if the chief is on. Is he on?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, and also we probably are going to need Chief McBride in here or the representative from San Bernardino PD also, and I think he's on. I think I see him. So let me start and let Commissioner. We did not get this to you, Commissioner Jarman. We just got it last Thursday, I believe. And so we were going to get it over to you. My effort is to, I'll come back to that. We're going to get over to you, but we just got it on Thursday. So we did go ahead and put it on the agenda as new business from Commissioner Carrillo. And then the commission can decide where to go with this afterwards. But we'll make sure your Commissioner Jarman is versed in where we go after this. With that, Commissioner Carrillo, it's your floor.
Okay. So the idea of doing a recommendation ultimately to the city council is to see if we can prevent some loss and possible loss of life, loss of property. But in just the preliminary investigation, I did reach out to one of my local commanders, and she gave me a little bit of information. Just the PD support backup for the Castaways fire resulted in about $20,000 worth of just support. So they didn't really address the fire situation, but they supported the fire department. And my concern is transients being an issue that could potentially cost the city not only personnel costs, but I mean, in that particular fire, there was two structures that was involved. One structure completely burned to the ground, and according to the commander, that person hasn't even come back to the city. So, in addition to the $20,000 worth of personnel costs to the PD, was an additional whatever the insurance would be in the displacement of our citizens. My sister lives on 54th Street. Directly across the street from her is a house that burned to the ground. And I did a little homework, like I said, and we already have campers camping in the foothills. We're coming into this dangerous fire season. And when I look at how much it costs, let alone just the emotional impact of changing how your neighborhood looks when it burns, with the $84 million that we have granted to the city, I think we're going to need data in order to address the transients. We know that when we address transients, a lot of times the image is that we're, discriminating against the homeless. But I say if we're going to act responsibly, then we need the data to be able to support why we're displacing some of the transients. And it's not just an issue that's along the foothills, which is extreme. So the Castaways fire was started by a transient on the Shandon Hills, right to the west of the freeway. And if we don't have that data, if we go to move the transients and we don't have data to support, look, we're moving them because of potential fire, then what it looks like, and we want to avoid that image, is that we're discriminating against the homeless and what I call the urban campers. And with the extra fund,
Commissioner Creel, at the risk of interrupting you, I think maybe appropriate to say to us what data you believe is necessary, or what data specifically you're requesting or thinking of, and how that could work, and then we can responses back from everybody else as to how we want to go with that.
Sure. So the issue came up because I asked the question last time, how many of the 3,600 fire incidents were caused by transients, and Chief Mejia didn't have any data on that. And I think that that's a miss. When I know that the surrounding cities, and I believe even yourself, Chief, said that the surrounding cities gather that data. So unless we have that data, we can't even make a recommendation. I would like to hear what the chief says, because it does involve his personnel. If any fire starts, it's costly. And what I see when the chief has to delegate officers to an area because of a fire, it leaves our city vulnerable.
So what data specifically would you be asking the chief to collect and disseminate?
So again, I believe it should be collected by the fire department. But one, the source of the fire. the only thing we have right now is whether it's occupied or not, and not whether it's a transient, homeless, or urban camper situation. I just think that that's so important to act responsibly, to know what is the origin of the fire. If we're finding out that 50% of the fires are caused by transients and we don't have the data to support that, then we can't make the decision to utilize the programs that are available to assist the city to displace the homeless and the urban campers.
Okay, so to address that issue first, Chief Mejia, as I understand it, it's to determine how what process could be done, if there is one, to start gathering data that incidents appear transient related. I think that's issue number one.
Well,
Correct.
first, I think we talked about it last time, is we don't have a checkbox that says this is caused by a transient. I think what we do is we write in the notes if we find out that it is, but even then we're making some assumptions. So our data is always going to be skewed unless we actually see somebody that starts it. Now we have a suspect, right? And now we can make a determination if they're transient or not. Short of that, we're making some assumptions, and we're trying to give you data based on assumptions, and that's not what we do. So it's difficult, and any information we give you, it's going to really be skewed.
Okay. Commissioner Carrillo?
I know that I've interviewed police officers that told me they know that some of these fires are started by transients. It's just an issue of us not collecting the data. When the house across the street from my sister burned, I spoke with the reporter, and her husband is on one of the commissions in Riverside, and she indicated that 50% of the fires are being related to some kind of transient or urban camping situation. And the fact that the surrounding cities, again, are doing something that we're not, I just think that's useful data. Even if we just have to have a one-page, check that box, because there has to be a difference between a resident that starts a fire and a transient that's warming himself inside that house and starts a fire.
Again, we're making some assumptions just because, we can make the assumption that if it's a boarded up house and the only people that seem to be occupying it are the transients, right? We can make the assumption that it probably started there if it has no power or no natural gas or any kind of other way to start a fire. So again, but short of us actually seeing or having good information that it was started by them, we're making assumptions. And these are reports that go out. Yes, we can say that 50%, whatever number of our vacant buildings are started by transients. It's probably implied, but without that good, solid information that it was started by them, that we just cannot say, hey, it was a transient fire.
So
Can I
Be trying to burn down their house and get rid of that piece of property.
Can I ask you if you have like arson investigators who go out and determine the
cause of origin? So our investigators go out on every fire, and they have a responsibility to determine cause and origin. And then once they determine if it's determined it's arson or even accidental, we try to find out who started it. And in a lot of cases, we just don't have witnesses. We don't have that information available to us. And so we're forced to put unknown.
Can I give my personal observation?
Let the chief finish.
We can make some assumptions, and I could give you all the data on how many vacant boarded up buildings that we have fires in that have no power, no electricity, and it could be suspicious. And that's what we label them as, suspicious in nature. But like I said, without that, I even talked to our arson investigators, and they said that unless they have good intel, that they're not going to put that down.
Do you partner with PD if it's if you think there's a crime involved? Is there?
Our arson investigators have the ability to make arrests on arson fires.
Okay. Korea.
Yes, I was going to say my personal observation and working with the various businesses around here. There is a closed business next to Mike's Burgers on Highland, and I believe it's Sepulveda. And it's all fenced in, and there's transients in the area, and that was burned down. There also was a fire on the backside of Jack in the Box late at night, and you can see that it was externally up against the building, where there's fire and soot up against the wall. The used to be the bowling alley that was across the street from the highway patrol. There was transients going in and out of that building right before it burned. That's in very close proximity. And I think, Chief, even if we can get a probable cause that it's likely that it was, it just allows us to have those resources so it doesn't look like we're picking on the homeless. I mean, at some point you could go, okay, look, there's, the business is closed, it's all boarded up, there's a fire that starts inside, and you could say, well, we don't know what started it. But I think, a arson investigator would say it's likely that somebody was using it for heat. I would think that there's a big difference between somebody trying to light the building on fire and somebody putting a campfire. I do know that the PD do respond to those things. Chief, if you had anything, it'd be appreciated.
If I could add, what you're talking about is more anecdotal evidence that, hey, yeah, I think it might be someone who's a transient, someone who is in the building. You don't have probable cause or reasonable suspicion. So it's just anecdotal that, yeah, you sometimes see transients. It could be that there were kids in there. It could be someone that is interested in burning their place down because it's not profitable to own the business and they want to get an insurance claim against it. So as the Chief Mejia is saying, without an investigation to determine that person who started that, whether it was arson, whether it was accidental, there's a lot of stuff that goes into their investigation to make those determinations. And I think otherwise you're just working off anecdotal, information, and that's not reliable. It's just a hunch, and we can't make those assumptions sometimes.
Can I add that would be true if we were looking to proceed with criminal investigation against whoever started it. But I'm looking at more in preventing fires and safeguarding the public. So it is not to go after the person that started the fire. That would open a can of worms that would be expensive. But it would be that if it's likely, we could use some of these resources to help our homeless get off of the street and out of those precarious situations that, can cause issues. The Shannon Hills fire that started, I believe it was in 18, that one, they traced it right back. They knew that a barbecue pit had fallen over, and that person ended up in St. Bernardine. So I get it when we don't have the exact, but we're looking for probable, so that we can utilize our resources.
I think what you're talking about is that it goes towards our credibility, and we don't deal in anecdotal evidence. We deal with actual evidence, and it goes towards our credibility. If we were to offer a report, for example, and say that, for example, 50% of our fires are started by transients, then you get called on and say, well, how do you know that? Well, we don't really know that for a fact, but we're just using anecdotal evidence that we have a lot of transients and we think that they caused the fires. Then you lack any credibility to go further, and people just shut down and don't listen to you. You have to actually have credible evidence to support those findings. And that's what we deal with. We don't deal with anecdotal, we deal with fact-based evidence. And that, there's certain hurdles you overcome for different standards of evidence. In civil courts, preponderance, in criminal courts is beyond a reasonable doubt. And there are different levels of that, but we want to make sure that we're not dealing in anecdotal evidence, that we want to have fact-based information that we're providing, not just what we think.
But if we were to do that, if you were to ask yourself logically, how would you ever get that evidence unless the transient burned up in the fire? Please tell them we got a meeting going on.
Well, that's part of an investigation. When there's a fire, the fire department goes out there and determines cause and origin. Part of that is going to be an investigation to determine, well, if it was caused in here and it is arson or accidental, were there any witnesses? Did they see who caused this fire? Did anybody fleeing the scene? And there may not be, if it's accidental, there may not be criminal potentially, who knows? But they're going to conduct an investigation and make those determinations of fact. And just like I can tell you that probably most people that use hard drugs today start with marijuana. That's anecdotal. I don't have the evidence to support that at hand. It's the same kind of thing.
I think when you look at the purpose why we're bringing it forward, though, is to offer help to the homeless. It's not really to to prosecute them, persecute them, but to eliminate the threat. Chief, last time we were at the meeting, you did mention that other cities around us collect the data. How do they overcome the fact that it's anecdotal? Mejia.
Oh.
Oh, well, I will just say this. I talked to our investigators and they said they're going to only put down the facts that they have. And that's just how our reports are written and they have to stand by them. I would also say this, though. It's not, we could easily say that if you reduce the homeless population in or boarded up these vacant buildings even tighter so they can't get in, we'd probably see our fires go down. I think that everybody's aware of the homeless situation and the issues it could create. I don't think people need more data to realize that we need to help the homeless and assist them getting off the street. And that will help a lot of those issues. So we are investigating these. We do cause an origin. Anytime we can find a suspect, we go after it so we could solve these. And if we're getting a repeat offenders where people are going out and setting multiple fires, we're always trying to solve these things. So I don't see where this data is going to push this argument any farther. I think that it's in the forefront of everybody, and everybody's well aware of the issues with the homeless or the transient living.
Can I ask you, Chief, do you currently have some data that will show any arrest or any where you actually were able to trace it back to a suspect? And of course, the step behind that would be that you were able to determine in some tangible legal way that that person was a transient.
Yes, we do.
Okay, that information, then perhaps we could get that or a copy of those stats. We could. If there's real data, because I'm with you, I understand it. We all see it, but I'm careful not to tag people, and if there's no absolute proof or I don't know. I just don't want to indict anybody that, maybe because of their demographic or because of their financial conditions or whatever else. Although I agree completely with Commissioner Carrillo that we should be talking to somebody about trying to develop a good set of data. And I know that the DROs on PD side do a lot of work with the transient and homeless, and they collect a lot of data. But again, the departments don't actually issue data on speculation because once they do it, it has to stand up to the federal government, to whoever else watches over them. So I get that part. But since you do have some data of some of the things that you've chased from the beginning to the end and found that, maybe we could just get those stats and that would help.
Yes, we could compile those stats.
Okay. Any others want to chime in on this?
Well, I would, Commissioner Jarman.
Commissioner Jarman.
I was listening to the to the dialogue between Commissioner Carrillo and the responses by Chief Mejia and Chief McBride. Having been served in law enforcement myself, I would I can see a need for what Commissioner Carrillo is proposing. However, I have to side with the chief, but here and McBride in terms of being able to collect that information without some kind of plan in place, rather than responding to the call and I'm talking about the fire by homeless, because oftentimes you don't have any witnesses, or the person who may have started the fire is not at the location. So it's difficult to determine concisely as to whether or not the fire was caused by a homeless person. But I would say Commissioner Correa, you indicated that the city of Riverside has a program in progress now for collecting that kind of data.
That was told to me by the reporter that came out to report on the fire that was on 54th Street that burned down the house. You know, I'm open to modifying that to however we can achieve, because again, the intention never was to bring charges, persecute, discriminate, tag a person, particularly in light of what both chiefs said. We certainly don't want to, declare somebody did something when we don't have the evidence. But I think we can make some relative observations that would tell us that these kind of situations are leading to fires that are putting the citizens in harm's way, and also are costing personnel cost and time costs for the PD and also for the fire department. But the whole thing, again, is not really to declare definitively it was out of the 3,600, it was exactly 355 incidents. It's to give us the data to be able to say, you know what, to support moving the transients into a better situation. When I look at the campers that are in Waterman Canyon, my sister tells me they're there now. Why are they there? And if we want them to move, unless we have data that says, you know what, camping in those high risk areas is just not a good thing. It's not a good thing for myself, my family, or anybody else. So when the transients are there, it's very difficult to move them out. And again, with the supporting data, it allows us to, with a clear conscience, be able to reach out to the programs that are available and say, look, you know, I don't know where exactly you'll go, but you can't be in those high risk areas. The danger is too high. So I'm open to however we want to modify this, because again, the purpose is to safeguard the communities and to reduce and mitigate the cost that our city is facing when fires are caused by likely sources that we are not tracking.
I think you're I think I get a good feel of where you're going. I think that this is why it's appropriate to go to the subcommittees, so the subcommittees can do the work and the staff can do the backup, and then perhaps bring us something. We did get that the chief can give us the data they currently have. Also, I would say that when you start talking about certain areas, for instance, we have a fireworks law that says there can be no fireworks north of the 210 freeway. Well, to that end, there may be a likely way to say, okay, let's go up and pick the Waterman Canyon little camp out there, or where the cars pull in and park. Maybe then there's a chance to talk to code, talk to fire, talk to PD, and maybe they come up with something that says maybe it's a 2-hour time limit to be there, or something to that nature that creates a policy that kind of starts to move in the direction of trying to clear some of these areas. So, just like the stop sign is going in to mitigate some traffic issues, we want to try to move from recommend policy changes. And so maybe we see a high degree of campers. I'm picking a place at random just because you mentioned Waterman Canyon. I happen to know that there are a lot of people that park in that little turnout before you come around that last curve. Maybe then there's something to be said to Alex and Public Works and others, that maybe we talk about setting, 2-hour time limit. Maybe we put signs that say no parking overnight. I don't know. And if there's no if it's not allowed to be parking or standing overnight or something like that, then you create an enforcement mechanism where you can, they can actually act on stuff. And I think I get that. What I want to suggest, are there other commissioners that want to jump in on this? Commissioner Peter.
Yeah, I'd just like to maybe see if I can contribute to this conversation. The way I see this is maybe we're looking at two different things, right? So the county does a point in time count, right, every year.
Right.
And we, as a city, we know what the transient population looks like, right? And as a commissioner, I think when we're talking about data, I think it's important that maybe we look at the aspect of what's that population look like every year when we're doing these counts, and is it being reduced? Is it increasing? And then what is the city doing in terms of providing resources to provide alternatives to these individuals, so they don't have to, camp in those high risk areas? So are we increasing our budgets to do X, Y, and Z? Maybe that be increasing shelter. What are we doing from a policy perspective to try to tackle that specific issue? And obviously, I think resources are going to be a big key here, right? It's like what, and we can look at the numbers in terms of monetary numbers and say, hey, can we see that this is correlated? The more money we're putting into this issue, we can see that we're reducing this. Not saying, because we don't. The idea is not to, okay, let's pick up our homeless population, let's just move them somewhere else, right? That's not what we're not trying to achieve that. What we're trying to achieve is actually resources and opportunities to get these folks on the right track, or just provide housing for them, right? Whatever that may be.
And protection.
Sure. And then, so the other issue I would say is, okay, so regarding the fires, maybe it's a good opportunity for us, and forgive me, this might've been something we went over last month, our last meeting, and I just forgot, but when we're looking at like certain retail locations or certain businesses that are vacant, and we're seeing that, what is the number of those types of establishments that are vacant, and maybe somebody's going in there and starting these fires. For me, from a policy perspective, it's like we have root causes. So it's not necessarily stopping that individual from going inside there. It's why do we have a vacant business establishment in the first place, right? And how do we get that place to be occupied, and can start contributing back to our community, right? Because that gives so many more benefits. And then we can look at the cost and benefit in terms of those aspects. But I would like to see maybe those numbers, if that's possible. What establishments, if we're having these, these properties that aren't being taken care of, and folks are going in there, hypothetically, are going in there and starting these fires and putting people at risk. Why are those things vacant in the first place, and how do we fix that, right? So that would be my contribution to that conversation.
What I would chime in on is something that interests me would be, I know PD, they told us, I want to say some time ago, or they told us and council that their resources were how they dispatch their resources. Is the chief still on? Yeah, he is. How the PD dispatches their resources is data-based. To that end, I would be interested in where geographically we are seeing more incidents than not. Because if you have if we're seeing more incidents up on the, I'm going to use again the Waterman Canyon, because we just used it as a hypothesis. But if all of a sudden we see a spike in incidents going on in that area, then it would sort of, I think, could guide resources there. If we're seeing spikes geographically, or I think that would be of interest to me, as you were saying, is to be able to kind of say, we're seeing more calls for service, in the Waterman and Baseline area, that, I'm just picking an area, but that it would kind of guide the resources. I know the chief told us on the PD side that Chief McBride, can you jump in here? That here he is, that they do their resources so like the DROs move around, district resource officers, based on where they see needs or spikes. And it may not just be, I don't know, I don't want to say that. Chief is here, let me let him jump in and tell us how they use the data to move their DROs around.
Yeah, obviously, it depends on what the DROs are working at the given time. They'll do a lot of analysis on data based on if they're looking for, where stolen cars are being located to identify maybe where someone is, possibly stealing them and then leaving them to conduct surveillance and stuff like that. So it just depends on whatever they're looking for. They'll look and query our data to see what's beneficial or useful for them to conduct that investigation.
But specifically when they're dealing with transient or homeless kinds of issues, I think the last report we got said they had over 8,000 homeless contacts. Is that data driven, or is there some way they know kind of areas geographically that they're seeing an increase or decrease in?
So what happens is that they go out and assist Public Works in those cleanups around the community. And so they go out and assist that to make sure that they're safe when Public Works does those cleanups. So they contact the transients that are located in those positions on numerous occasions. They track that by district, but it's not something that's tracked necessarily in our records management system, but they track that by district. They keep activity reports.
So on your side, you could give some data as to there's been more homeless interactions in this district and less than this, or there's been a spike in this district and less than this. Is that fairly accurate?
Well, it's not necessarily accurate on all that, because a lot of the times when transients camp, for example, a lot of them live in the flood control channels in the Santa Ana River Wash, and then they go into other areas. We don't track that. We don't clean up those areas. Those are county, but it affects the city. And so, and that, quite honestly, I don't think the county goes in there because of the Idaho decision. They don't remove people from public property unless they have a spot to place them. And so they go out and provide information on resources, which is what we do as well. And it's up to that individual to seek out those resources. As you know, we can't forcibly remove somebody who doesn't have a place to go, and we don't have a place to put them. So the Supreme Court's been pretty clear on that.
Okay, thanks. So, I mean, it's certainly an issue as to how we collect it. And I think maybe we start with what Chief Mejia says he will produce, what they currently have, and we'll start taking a look from there, I think.
I would like to.
If you go back to the original premise, as Commissioner Peden mentioned, we do have the point in time count that is conducted annually. So we have, at that given point, what our estimated population is as far as transients are. And then it's anecdotal on that you believe that a lot of these transients do occupy vacant and abandoned buildings, and that we do have a certain amount of those buildings that do burn. But as far as saying that definitively those are caused by transients, you really can't say that unless they have evidence to show that. But you can anecdotally say that you believe that transients do occupy vacant and abandoned buildings, and that you believe that they are also maybe potentially the root cause of those fires. But you can't say that definitively, and what percentage are caused by that data.
And I'd also like to add, the county fire is also tracking the vacant buildings in San Bernardino City. So we have a good number of those. And then we also track how many fires start in those vacant buildings. Now, what we're going to do with that data, really at this point, is just data. It gives us an idea of how many times a building is burned and, some cause and origin. And it kind of helps us with looking at if a building should be torn down or not, and look for an emergency abatement. But it's one of those things that we're also tracking, and we're trying to see how this data fits in. It's difficult for us to go and say we look at a vacant building And we could look at it today and it's well boarded up, but that doesn't mean tomorrow they go in and they figure out a way to get in. I will say though, that in the city, every vacant building fire we go to, we make the assumption that there's probably a transient living inside, and it forces us to have to go in and search those buildings prior to making any other decisions on that fire ground.
All right. What I'd like to recommend is that there's clearly work to be done here. And again, I'd like to recommend this go to the fire subcommittee and you guys do your workup on it and kind of come back to us with what Commissioner Jarman, you and Chief can work together or chit chat, as well as the other two commissioners, and then kind of come back and bring us some policy thoughts or whatever you can produce, whatever you feel might help us along. And I do want to pause and welcome Council Member Alexander, who has joined us. I want to acknowledge his presence. But what I'd like to do to move this forward is refer it to the fire subcommittee. And if that's okay, what we'll do is I'll do it this way. I'll ask for a move to continue the item. And no, let me just ask for a motion to refer it to the fire subcommittee. Can I get a motion on that?
That we refer
Oh, sorry.
to the fire.
Okay, and is there a second on that?
Can I add something before we vote?
And add till I get a second.
Yes, Walter.
Okay, second on Walters. Okay, sir, go ahead.
So I look at the purpose, and I so appreciate Mr. Peden's view and yours too, Chairman Elliott. The concern would be that if you have a homeless encampment in a high fire area, what can we do to address that immediately? I certainly understand a cleanup, but I know that you even have to give an eviction notice, and it takes several days. And when you have a place that's reoccurring with transients, maybe with a look at how can we address that situation in a more immediate area.
I get you, and of course you and I have talked. We can go around and round and round and never stop because there's so much to be done. The right way to approach it is to sit down with Commissioner Jarman and get a set of specifics that you think will help us on this journey, and then we get the chiefs involved and say, okay, what can we do? What can't we do? We need public works. We need code enforcement. We need to start down that road. And the subcommittee is the appropriate place for that. By the time it comes back to the full commission, we'll have a set of, hopefully you've gotten through most of this discussion and have come up with a complete, or at least a partial, cohesive set of thoughts, and potentially it gives Chief Mejia the chance to respond to some of your concerns. Yes, we can. No, we can't. I mean, tonight we went from what was assumed that there was no data to learning from Chief Mejia. There is data. They have data on cases that they actually have taken all the way from front to end. They also have data on abandoned buildings. They also have data on how many times fires were started in abandoned buildings and where they are. So there is data. And so I think the best thing to do is work with Commissioner Jarman and work through that with the subcommittee, and then come back at us. At that time, staff has a chance. They know what's up. They've had a chance to prepare a report, bring all of us what they do have, what they don't have, and kind of get some direction after that.
Okay.
All right. With that, those in favor of the motion to refer to subcommittee, fire subcommittee, say aye.
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 Those opposed, let the record reflect that it is unanimous. The next item that I personally wanted to ask Chief Mejia, don't take off, Chief, was about, and I need Chief McBride too, was about the proactive pre-fire season actions. I know every year fire does some public service stuff, and I think code gets out with their code enforcement, brush clearing, moving around to properties and people that have let their properties get out of control. I think PD also does some stuff. I'm not all sure what, other than the public service. I know in years past, there's been a public service announcement that has gone out to through the water bills to the residents. And I'm just wondering, with us walking into the fire season, are we doing stuff like that? And I know we're not scheduled to reopen until July, but I'm wondering, is fire doing anything? Is PD doing anything along those lines? I know fireworks are coming up. So that was just a question I wanted to put out for discussion and get a word from you, Chief Mejia and Chief McBride.
So County Fire continues with the use of county land services to do weed abatement in the city, but we only manage the vacant lots. So that will continue, and we only really do it in areas where the interface issues are. So where the Forest Service or high fire danger meets up with the city, that's where we focus our attention. So those will be continuing on, and that's how we try to reduce the fire spread.
And the goats, is that you?
So the goats were an experiment last year. We're still trying to get funding through the state to put goats back up on Little Mountain and Little Mountain primarily, and over by the Castaway. So we're still waiting to see if that funding will come through. So
Okay.
it's still, the verdict's still out.
How effective was that?
Well, we did, I think, 55 acres. It was done around 100 homes. And the only way we could say is that we didn't have any fire loss in that area last year. So we feel it was really effective.
I see them out in the 91 coming up on the 241. I see the goats going all up that mountain. I think that's a great and ecological way to clear some of this brush. Chief McBride, any public service going on, or does the department interface with Public Works? I mentioned that the code enforcement gets out and hot as it relates to people cleaning up their yards and things around fire season. Is there anything that's done on the PD side that kind of is pre-fireworks season?
So the only thing that we will do, and we are starting to put those out already, is some PSAs on fireworks, because there is an illegal element to that. As far as fire related stuff, we leave that to the fire department, and we'll take the crime issues.
No, I got it, but I meant as it related to fireworks and things like that.
We've already started to put out some stuff on our social media about illegal fireworks.
Okay.
We've made some arrests already, and we'll continue to put those out up and through the 4th of July. And that's our input into the fire stuff, because there is an element of the penal code and health and safety code that's involved in that. But in regards to fire season coming up, and going in the summer, that'll be up to the fire department to do that.
Yes, sir. And Alex, can you jump in here on the Public Works side?
Public Works do not actually do any kind of PR or like for that. We rely on the fire department. They're the one that is really sending all the notes, and we will support them in regard, like you mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, if there is any restriction for parking, there is any issue that we see that is no parking for like 72 hours or no parking forever. It depends at the location. So that's the way we support the fire department in what they needed done. And of course, other things that we try to do, for example, now we are going to be upgrading some signal lights. So the signal lights, we will have what we call the AVP, which is the emergency vehicle preamps on them. That's give the emergency vehicles like the traffic, sort of like the fire and the police, the right of way, they have green so they can get to where they want to get so they can fight the fire. So we try to help them with as much as we can, but we do not send a note per se saying it's fire season, you need to do this. because that is not actually our job, honestly.
Well, code enforcement does that, right?
Code enforcement reports to the community development department. They do go around. We send them, they send them, my understanding, before the fire season. They look at the private properties, and if there is any weed abatement, they send notice to the owners, or if there is, like an occupant, a renter. So they send them the notice from time to time, telling them that is okay, the grass is growing and you need to do the abatement. They do that. That is correct. And we get the same abatement notice from the fire for out the properties that the city owns.
Who was the progenitor for putting, the little PSA inside the water bills?
I believe that's the fire department.
Oh, okay. Okay. Chief, is that true?
Is that correct?
It could be, yes.
I believe they are.
And we can look into that. We have our PIL speak with them. But this might be a good time, too, to talk about we had a voluntary fireworks surrender day last Saturday in the city in wake of the explosion they had in Ontario. We had quite a few calls into the city saying, hey, where could I surrender my fireworks so I don't have to perform at home? Unfortunately, we had nobody take us up on it. So we had 0 people turning in their fireworks. We're going to try one more time tomorrow here at Station 221, and we'll see what kind of response we get. Well, we're doing this throughout the county, not just.
What did they offer them in return for surrendering their fireworks?
A safe place to turn them in at. That's what we are.
And not get arrested.
We didn't. Yeah,
I know when
not get fined $1,000. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, I know. When
it was just a voluntary surrender.
Okay. I know when PD did the thing that was
with the guns.
Yes, by Councilman Alexander. They gave him a gift card or something, and so I just was curious. And could you, if possible, Chief, if you do more, or decide to do any more, and we could get some notice, maybe you could just email Susie so we could jump in on the PSAs and help push that out too. So with a little more notice tonight.
We notified the city manager in advance that we were doing this. So
okay. Okay, so that means no, you're not going to tell Susie.
No, I could send it to you. It's just
okay. We go to the public meetings, we go to the this, that, and the other, and we can help scream it out a little louder. From our individual social media accounts, or wherever we can do to so nobody can say I never heard of that, or less people perhaps. All right. Yes, sir.
If I may comment, I'm glad the chief commented on that. It was advertised because I saw it on YouTube and several other applications.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion on this? This is not an action item.
Just a simple comment. Only in my interaction with the community, a lot of times the firework issue, as much as you would think otherwise, isn't really a fire issue. It becomes a pet issue. So many people have pets, and I don't, but I know my next door neighbor, she has a conniption, and she needs counseling after the days with a lot of fireworks. And I get it. I mean, pets are like a part of the family to a lot of people. But what is there imminent danger from the fireworks? Do we have data that supports that fire is actually caused by fireworks, or is it just the nuisance and the potential? Any comments from anybody? Because we address that so often in the community meetings. And again, it's just useful to be able to respond responsibly to people that are concerned.
Let's put that on, if you decide to, sir, on the next agenda. This is just pre-fire season actions. It's not an action item. And as soon as we finish this, I'll give you a little bit of an explanation. I know City Council passed something, and I'll let you in on that just a little bit. But is there any other discussion on pre-fire season actions by anyone? Great. There's no action on this required. All right. Thank you, Chief. Both of you. Appreciate you. Announcements and reports. That's item number 6. Let me jump in and tell you that Susie and I are going to get you out the actual resolution that was agreed to and approved by City Council as to how items are to be put on the agenda. We have to be very careful, so I want to be as clear as I can, but we will get you the actual resolution that explains how that happens. And that is how they get put on the agenda. Give me 1 second. That's my phone ringing. Sorry, I wasn't going to answer it. I was just trying to make it shut up. So what we have to do to stay with the Brown Act is we can only deal with issues that are on the agenda for action. And then we have to stay in that line because the public has to know what we're talking about. And if there are any staff reports that have to come, as you look at your backup on your agenda packet, you see that everything that we see or that there were action items on our consent calendar, there's backup behind it. So the public has to be able to see everything. So so we have to stick in the thin line of the agenda item. And then when we come to this point at the end of the meeting, it is then where we can suggest items to go on the future agenda. But even that then needs to be voted on and approved by a majority of the commission to make it to the agenda. What the attempt is to do by the subcommittees is at any time in between meetings, anytime, meaning tomorrow, anytime between meetings, if there's an issue, to eliminate 9 people calling Alex or Chief McBride or Chief Mejia or whatever, contact your subcommittee chair and let them know what it is. You can take them through your full discussion about that. And then the subcommittee chairs will reach out to the appropriate department heads, get that information to them so that once it hits the agenda, we can get a staff report, we can get all the necessary documentation that allows us per Brown to put it on the agenda and deal with it openly and publicly. We can't, the reason why there was some latitude for Commissioner Carrillo's fire item is because you saw an attachment, and what Susie and I did is we just put the entire email in there, which enumerated all the items that he was talking about. So it was available to the public. But then we can't start discussions outside of our agenda. That is prohibited by law. And so I don't mean to cut in on you and you guys say, who the heck does Elliot think he is? We can get in some trouble with the Brown Act if we don't stay on our agenda. And so, again, I recommend that whatever it may be, if you find there's an issue that's a public works related issue, contact Commissioner Peden right away. And you can talk to him until either of you run out of time or battery, and figure out what you're going to do. It is 3 of you. I did look into Brown and I did ask an inquiry of the city attorney. Our subcommittees are classified as standing committees. And as such, there is no majority of the commission. And as such, you all are entitled to have discussions, but you can't take action. The only action you can take is bring it to the full commission. But you're entitled to discuss it. There's no majority of the commission there. We're a standing committee, so there is no violation of Brown, as long as it's just the 3 and no more. And then ultimately, again, that subcommittee in and of itself can take no action. The only thing it can do is bring it forward. My hopes with the subcommittees, when I proposed this 2 years ago, was that the subcommittees could do the work, talk to the department heads, have the department heads ready so that we could bring this stuff forward and have a full packet for the public to see. And then they were able, and because we have 3 large departments, PD, Public Works, and Fire, it allowed us to move, everybody to do their work. And so that's the real reason for it. We will, again, get you out the actual resolution that was passed by City Council in the last meeting that specifically says how items come on the agenda. And so they can be presented by staff, they can be recommended and presented by the majority of the commission, or what I'll call, and this is my term, not a legal term, emergency issues or last minute issues. In this case, as I mentioned with Commissioner Carrillo's, we just received it Thursday. And so there wasn't sufficient time to get it to Commissioner Jarman or him to deliberate. So we just put it on the agenda for everybody. So those are the ways that items get on the agenda. And then we're not really permitted to sit here and have roundtables. We can during commissioner announcements and all that stuff. You can talk about what you're thinking, but when it starts talking about action or potential action, it must be agendized with a full staff report or whatever else has to come with it. Just so we're clear. And again, we'll get you the full reading of the resolution. Susie also has all of the new commissioners and those who have not yet gotten them. She has your packets. And I'll let her speak to that, how she gets them to you or you pick them up or whatever happens. But she has your full packets, which have the Brown Act and everything in it. They're full packets of kind of need to know kind of issues, which you should get shortly. With that in mind, I'm going to start and move around. If there are announcements or reports, or it's not on here, can I also add in, Susie? Let me ask you into this, or let me get the. Can I add in items to be referred to for the agenda? We don't have it here, but can we get it on the next agenda?
Yes, we'll get it on the next agenda. I'll go ahead and send out a copy of that resolution. And what it was is what the mayor and common council adopted at the last meeting, where there's a section in our actual agenda for future agenda items.
Great.
And that's where you can talk about that. I'd like to bring this.
So at our, because it's not here today,
it will be in the next one.
We'll roll as is, but you will have that item on our next agenda.
I will. And then if I may also, you skipped over public comments for items listed and not listed on the agenda, but just for the record, there were none. There were no written and there were no audio recorded messages. So
thank you. Thank you. I apologize. No. All right. So I'm going to move around. If anyone has any announcements or reports or anything, you've come up on or discovered or gone to a community meeting or anything, I'll move all the way around and you all can voice that now. By the time we get to our next month's meeting, we will have an item on the agenda that is items for future agendas, which at that point we'll be able to take that as an action. But as of now, would you please move through the subcommittee chairs? Okay, let me start with Commissioner Jarman.
Oh, I have nothing. I've just been in limbo due to COVID-19. But I didn't get a packet when I first was appointed. So is it possible that I can get one?
I forgot to mention that. Yes, I have binders.
Oh, okay.
And they have tabs in the various sections so that it's easy to refer to. I've made them up. I have them here at the station. So if you're able to swing by to pick them up, I can leave them at the front desk. Front desk hours are Monday through Thursday, 9 to 4.
Okay.
So if you can arrange to pick them up, at some time, just let me know ahead of time, give me a call or email me, and I will leave the binder at the front desk.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Peden.
No reports.
All right. Commissioner Correa.
No reports, but I did want to just ask a question. We've got a couple of issues that are going on nationally with the PD, and I'm just wondering, are we making any precautions to protect the community and the police in light of the recent activities that have been on the news regarding police officers? My heart goes out to everybody. I see that as everybody's a victim on that, but can we do anything as a commission to assist the police or to assist the community in protecting ourselves?
All right, great. I'll take a look at that, and I'll get with Commissioner Tombach, and we'll get with you individually, and we'll try to have something. We'll try to talk to the chiefs and the commanders and see if we can have something on the next agenda to give you some heads up as to what may or may not be going on. All right, Commissioner Walters.
Yes, I have nothing to really report. I just want to thank the police department for helping me and giving me information regarding my son was run over and killed last November on Mount Vernon and 6th.
Oh my goodness.
Sorry to hear that.
They did a good job investigating and gave me and the family some closure.
Great to hear that, and thank you to
Susie for her help with me too. And
who was that, sir?
Susie is one that helped me, and thank you very much with that. And I've had some medical problems, but I'm doing better now, and hopefully that everything is good now. So.
Thank you. We're glad to hear the good news. We're certainly sorry for the bad news, but glad to hear that the police department was proactive with you and helped you get some closure. That's nice to hear. Commissioner Kelly.
I don't have anything to report at this time. Thank you.
Commissioner Lanes.
I just have a question. What's being done about all the homeless in the Sicombe Park? We can't even go and have a walk around there. It is so full of homelessness. That's all the question I have.
Okay. Okay, so that's another potential, see if we can get you some information too on that. And I will get with Commissioner Peden also with his subcommittee and see if we can get you some answers from PD and from Public Works to see if we can get you some answers on that. So have I overlooked any of the commissioners?
Chairman, just real quick, I could give a real brief comment on the transients camping out in Seacombe Lake. So as I mentioned earlier, the Boise decision, which is a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court, says that it's not illegal and we cannot move people off of public property because it's sleeping and somewhat camping without ability to have access to housing is a right. So you can thank the courts for that decision. It makes it very difficult for us. We can't forcibly remove people. Obviously, we can enforce some components of stuff, but we just can't outright, when the park is open, force people out of the park or prevent them from sleeping in the park if they feel that there's no place available to them in the city. We can come back and provide an overview on that at a future agenda to give more context to that case decision.
Just while we're in announcements, Councilmember Alexander, sir, could you chime in here for a moment? I see you on. Welcome, sir.
Can I help you?
welcome again. Are you aware if council has set hours at our parks?
There are set hours at the parks. Now, whether we enforce them is a different story.
So our parks do.
Closed.
There are hours that they are closed.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
The,
All right.
uh,
Yes, sir. Alex.
The parks are open from sunset to sundown. That is
Okay.
what the hours are.
Okay. And so if Chief McBride, if the park is closed, does that change an enforcement dynamic?
I would have to refer, what's happened a lot is that even when you look at the county and look at the wash, the Santa Ana wash, when that's an endangered species habitat and
Right.
the county is unwilling to move transients out of that because of the Boise decision, that also affects us in the city. The last thing we want is to be sued by the ACLU or other advocacy groups for not allowing people to exist in the city. It's really complicated, the issues, and we can have someone come back and kind of debrief the commission at a later date on that Boise decision and how it affects us and our ability to enforce certain laws within the city and the nation as a whole.
Specifically, parks if they are closed.
Parks are public property. People have a right to sleep on a median if they want to. It's a public property, and going back to whether it's a fire danger or whatnot. Well, it's inherently dangerous to sleep in a public place where there's no safety either. But we can't prohibit them just because it's unsafe to do so.
Right.
It's people have a right to make their own decisions. They can sleep in the car. That's been a decision by the courts, and they can sleep in the car on the public streets, which is against municipal code. So.
Okay, Commissioner Cervantes.
No, I have nothing tonight. Thank you. There's no reports, anything.
You got your glasses on now, though.
Yeah, I'm sitting outside to get air because my oxygen level's low, so I'm trying to get air out here. Sorry about that. I apologize only. I apologize only. I've been having some health issues.
That's okay. We pray that you're feeling better.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. That being item number 7 is our adjournment. Our next meeting will be on Monday, May the 10th at 6:00 p.m. I do know the state is opening back up in July. It is anticipated at this point. So probably as summer gets here, we will get back to public meetings whenever the city manager opens it back up. In-person meetings is the proper way to say it. Did all of you, before I adjourn, has everyone received the contacts of all the commissioners?
I don't believe I have.
Okay, I think that is, Susie, that's in the book, is it not? In their notebooks? You're muted.
I can add it to the books.
Okay, great. So all of you will have contacts for all of the fellow commissioners, and then if it's a police-related issue, please email me or call me. If it's a fire-related issue, please email or call Commissioner Jarman. If it's a public works issue, please email or call Commissioner Peden. All right, with that, we are adjourned until May the 10th, 2021, 6 p.m. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, and good night.
Night.